All right, welcome back to another video of K-Stang Productions. I'm your host, Kiana Smith, and we're going to be talking about the bowl games that happened about two to 3 weeks ago, whether it was Clemson, Texas, whether it was Penn State and SMU, and teams of that nature, Tennessee, Ohio State. The last video we talked about the potential matchups that were going to come up, and we never discussed the actual scores nor the statistics that happened within those games. Nor did I tell you who actually won those games. So that is what this video is pretty much going to be about. It's going to be about who won the game, statistics, and the second round of the playoffs as well, because we're at that point and now we're in the semifinals. So let's get started. So the first game that we're going to talk about within this video is Indiana versus Notre Dame. This was a really good game. However, don't let the score fool you, honestly, because Notre Dame pretty much beat the snot out of them. They needed a tissue on the way home because they had to blow some boogers out. I mean, Notre Dame was basically beating them, 27-10, 27-7, I can't remember correctly. But basically, the Indiana Hoosiers, they got these points within the last couple of minutes of the fourth quarter. They almost made a comeback, but Notre Dame negated that. But Indiana just looked absolutely terrible throughout the entirety of the entire game. It looked like they basically didn't belong, honestly. But the score didn't reflect that because they were 11-2 on the season. Regardless if they played competition or so people say, they're still a college football team, and they still went 11-2 within their respective conference, within their division, and they're still an FBS team. So therefore, you can't say that they didn't play anybody because they played who the commissioners, who the people that were put in place to make their schedule. That's who they played. It's not the players' fault. They did what they came to do. They came together as a group and they went 11-2. So their quarterback, Curtis Rourke, went 20 for 33. He had 215 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Now this isn't bad, but the Notre Dame defense is pretty good, and they was getting after him the entire night. I mean, Justice Ellison, he went 11 for 37, and Indiana, they really didn't have a run game at all. Tyson Lawton, he went 10 for 34, and that was the substance of their running game. About 71 yards, no touchdowns from the running backs at all. I mean, even the wide receivers, only 2 wide receivers had above 50 yards within this game. Elijah Sarrett, he went 4 for 67, and Miles Price, he went 5 for 56 and a touchdown. That touchdown obviously didn't really do much. If you look on the special teams, let's see, 1 field goal. So, like I said, they could have done a lot better than what they did. It looked like they didn't belong, but I think Notre Dame was just an overpowering team, especially the way that they beat this past team. I'm not going to say it just yet, but I'm going to say it in the next video. So if you're watching this video, make sure you go watch the second video. That'll be playoffs round 2 for college football. But it just looked like the Indiana Hoosiers, it looked like they just basically did not belong. Riley Leonard, one of my favorite quarterbacks within college football right now. Also, he looks like a stand-up guy. I'm going to just say that. He looks like a stand-up guy. Marcus, what's his name? I know his first name is Marcus. Can't think of his last name. But the head coach of Notre Dame is really good. Really, really good. Better than what we anticipated or what we expected. Riley Leonard, he went 23 for 32, 201 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. You may be saying, well, how in the world did they get 27 points? Well, I'm going to tell you, their running back, Jeremiah Love, is absolutely unbelievable. Jeremiah Love went 8 for 108 and a touchdown, which is really good. Jadarian Price went 11 for 32. Riley Leonard also had 30 yards scrambling. So basically, everybody came together for the win, and that's what you want, a one common goal to win the football game. Nobody was trying to be a superhero, but they decided to get the job done. Jordan Folsom, he went 7 for 89, and that was the extent of their wide receivery, because Jeremiah Love was the second wide receiver with 2 receptions for 18 yards. But Riley Leonard did pretty much give everybody a catch of the football, and Notre Dame did end up winning this game by a substantial margin until those last couple of minutes within the fourth quarter. But good for Notre Dame. Honestly, I think I'm going to see that Notre Dame is going to be in the I think that they might be in the national championship, and I wouldn't be surprised if they win either. They played really, really good, better than I anticipated. And I was honestly rooting for them too. But we'll see as time progresses. Now, let's move over to SMU and Penn State. Let me just say right out of the gate, SMU looked like they didn't come to play offense nor defense. Now, obviously, this is probably one of the many times in countless years that SMU's been in playoff contention, and they actually decided to play good enough to be in the playoffs. But it just shows that Penn State, and I think everybody's just hyping it. SMU wasn't supposed to be here. SMU didn't play anybody, things of that nature. Well then, honestly, we should just get rid of conferences altogether so everybody plays everybody. Make 2 conferences so everybody sees everybody and nobody ducks smoke. Because you can't say that the SEC is the best right now. They might have the most talent within their conference, but the ACC, the Big 10, and the Big 12 have come to play, and the NIL era has basically defeated the SEC entirely in itself. And you could tell by the loss to Georgia this past weekend. You could tell by the loss to Tennessee. You could tell by the losses that Texas has had. You could tell by the losses that Alabama has had. You could tell by the losses that LSU has had. So don't tell me that the SEC is the best by a substantial margin, because they're not. They're absolutely not. The NIL deal has changed college football for good and for worse. And honestly, college football fans need to take that into account, because I'm tired of people saying that nobody plays nobody because they feel like the SEC plays all the hard teams. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, the Big 10 and the Big 12 have great teams, and the ACC only has a couple of great teams. Clemson being barely good. And then SMU, I don't think that SMU is bad. I just think they got punched in the mouth by a really heavy opponent. Let's get that out of the way. Penn State is a really heavy opponent. They're really hard hitting. And by the way that they beat Boise State didn't play nobody. They bottled up Ashton Jeanty. Well, let me tell you something. If you look at the Eagles have A.J. Brown, they have Devontae Smith, and they have Saquon Barkley. If they take out Saquon Barkley, what are they going to try to do? They're going to try to throw it. Well, when you try to defeat Saquon Barkley, you try to end up throwing it. But maybe, just maybe, their wide receiver game is not better than their running game. And that's what happened with SMU. Or Boise State this past weekend. SMU, they're just a shell of themselves at this point. Penn State is ranked the number 4 team in the nation. The SMU Mustangs, they went 11-3 on the season. I'm tired of it. They won the majority of their games. Oh, we should go off a strength of schedule. Okay, then. We better start cross-conferencing then. I'm talking about you need to play at least 2 to 3 SEC schools. You need to play at least 2 to 3 Big 10 schools. You need to play at least 2 to 3 Big 12 schools. You need to play at least 2 to 3 ACC schools. I'm just saying, because if we're going to make this argument, if we're going to start making this argument that they don't play anybody, then we need to start making it fair for everybody. That's my personal opinion. And then when players want to disperse talent even more than they already are, y'all going to be crying. Well, we only get 3 to 4 stars now. We used to have 4 to 5 stars now. You complain about everything. You just complain about everything. But all in all, Penn State beat SMU 38-10 in a mesmerizing fashion. Like I said, it looked like SMU didn't even belong, which they didn't. Especially playing Penn State. Now I know that SMU lost to Clemson. They got it backed up, which what we thought would happen, where SMU would have beat Clemson to stay in that top spot, and they might would have gotten that bye week. I don't know. Maybe not. They probably wouldn't have got that bye week. Then they probably would have ended up playing Texas. They honestly might have been a better opportunity for them to play Texas than Clemson was, because Clemson lost. We'll get into that later. But SMU, Kevin Jennings, he went 20 for 36, almost 50% on completions. And he had 3 interceptions. If I'm not mistaken, he had 2 pick sixes. Absolutely treacherous. Absolutely treacherous. You cannot throw 2 pick sixes in a ball game, much less 3 interceptions. 2 pick sixes? That's dirty work, crazy, and diabolical. Moving on, Brashard Smith, he went 18 for 62, so obviously they couldn't really get much on the ground. Penn State is a mesmerizing defense. They're diabolical, and they will abolish any type of run game or passing game that you would probably try to complete. Roderick Daniels Jr., he went 4 for 64. Jordan Hudson, he went 4 for 40. So, I mean, they put up what they could do, but basically when you try to run the ball through your quarterback the entire game, it ain't gonna happen. Because when you start putting 1 to 2 QB spies on him, he ain't going nowhere. And when you try to run the ball, they're already down in the box, And you can't throw it over their head because they got 2 safeties. They're playing cover 2 all game. And oh God, don't let them play man. Jesus Christ, have mercy. But Drew Aller, I'm glad he's coming back because he needs another year of progression. I mean, he's not the best. He went 13 for 22. If I'm not mistaken, he beat out a former quarterback in Penn State. He's tall, he's lanky. He probably can see over the O-line. I think he has a lot of potential, but he could be a little bit better. The way that he was playing Boise State, he turned the ball over. I will say that. He fumbled, and that was his fault. He went for 127 yards against SMU. You should have got way more than that. You should have at least got a touchdown. But he didn't throw any interceptions either, so that's pretty good. Nick Singleton, he had a pretty good night, 1490 and a touchdown. Caden Allen, 11 for 70 and 2 touchdowns. They pretty much led the way with the running game. Harrison Wallace, he went 4 for 48. Tyler Warren went 4 for 33. Honestly, it was really surprising to see Penn State beat the SMU Mustangs this bad, but kind of expected it. I didn't expect it to be such a big margin of victory. But that's what happens within college football. And people act like that's not what happens in college football. That's what happens. The next game that we're going to talk about is the Texas Longhorns versus my Clemson Tigers. My Clemson Tigers have been a shell of themselves all year. So honestly, I knew in my heart of hearts that we were going to lose this game regardless. But I still had hope. We had a run, and we fell flat on our faces. I mean, we barely had a running back. Our defense was atrocious. We're firing Wes Goodwin. If you did not know that, we're firing him. Not we, but Dabo and that part of the Clemson Tigers. They're firing him, which is needed. We need a better defensive coordinator that's focused on stopping the run and stop deep passes as well. Our defense was getting absolutely obliterated in the run game. I've been saying it all season. When your defensive line gets pushed around and your linebackers can't fill gaps, and that forces your safeties and cornerbacks to start holding on longer to wide receivers and tight ends, you get penalties, and it busts up your defense. Absolutely brutalizes your defense. I'm going to say that right now. I'm going to say it again. I'm going to say it again until our defense is back to what it was underneath Brent Venables. Now, he's one of a kind, but we could get back there or somewhere to that because this year we were trash. Absolute dog water. Hot dog water. Dirty water. Basically, Quinn Ewers outplayed Cade Klubnik. This was a battle of offenses. Defense for the Texas Longhorns were pretty good. Obviously, they're one of the top defenses within the SEC. So they obviously have a lot of talent in that area. And I think that Texas Longhorns defense is way better than Clemson Tigers offense. And the Texas Longhorns offense is way better than the Clemson Tigers defense. So all in all, their team was pretty much way better than us from the beginning. I think they gave Clemson Tigers a 16% chance to win the ball game, which I understand. And the score basically epiphysizes. Is that a word? Epiphysizes. It basically shows that they were way better than us. Cade Klubnik, he went 26 for 43, 336 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. It was probably one of his better games. But when you go 3 and outs the entire game, what more can you expect? I mean, Adam Randall was our leading rusher on the day. He went 4 for 44. Phil Moffitt was a shell of himself. He couldn't even play because he was injured. Keith Adams Jr., he went 3 for 11. Jarvis Green, he had 2 for 7. Honestly, I like what I saw from him because he had really good wide receiver numbers. He went 2 for 35. That's really good from him. And he had a touchdown at that. TJ Moore, he went 9 for 116 in a touchdown. Jake Brimstall, he went 4 for 69. Antonio Williams went 4 for 66 in a touchdown. Honestly, I think our offense could be a little bit better. Hopefully, it gets better over the spring, over the summer, because we need it. Honestly, Cade Klubnik's coming back. Honestly, I didn't know who we're going to have besides him, so it's probably a good thing. At least he has some type of experience. And honestly, I hope his experience does us justice next year. Quinn Ewers, he went 17 for 24. Really good from him. 202 yards, touchdown, and an interception. Jaden Blue was unbelievable. He went 14 for 146 yards on us, 2 touchdowns. Along with him went Quatravion Wisner with 15 carries for 110 yards and 2 touchdowns. If I'm not mistaken, Texas had 292 yards on the day, rushing on the day against our Clemson Tigers defense. And it showed. Because they opened more holes and more portals than Thanos did in the Avengers Endgame. That's how bad it was. That's how bad it was. And you can't really say much more than that. Gunnar Helm, he went 6 for 77. Matthew Golden went 2 for 49. They were bigger, stronger, faster, smarter than the Clemson Tigers. Plain and simple. Steve Sarkisian, offensive mind, was way better than Dabo Swinney could have ever been. What do you expect? I expected nothing more out of the Clemson Tigers. Honestly, I expected a miracle because we almost lost to SMU. I forgot to say that. But at the end of the day, we are who we've been all season. Trash. We've been absolute trash. This was another game. Oh, boy. This was another game during these bowl games that was trash. Not that the teams were trash, but the score output basically shows that it was trash. Ohio State basically demoralized, beat up on, caught a domestic violence charge against Tennessee because they beat them left, right, and up the middle. Ohio State beat them 42-17. Honestly, I picked Tennessee to beat Ohio State with Nico Iamaleava and Sampson, then running back. I thought their offense was going to be really good against the Ohio State Buckeyes defense. Little did I know they're one of the top-rated defenses within college football. So let's go over these stats right here. Nico Iamaleava went 14 for 31, 104 yards, no touchdowns, and no interceptions. If you watch this game, you could honestly say their offense looked atrocious. Absolutely. From all year to that game, their offense looked atrocious. They got obliterated, quite literally. Peyton Lewis went 10 for 77. Nico went 20 for 47. Dylan Sampson only went 2 for 6. Broom Coy went 4 for 40. Marcarius White went 1 for 17. Their offense was atrocious. There's not much more to say than that. I mean, hopefully they come back next year stronger, faster, smarter. But Ohio State was just the better team within this game. Will Howard, now everybody's been hating on Will Howard, but as long as he gets the job done and he gets the ball to Judkins, the running back, as long as he gets the ball to Jeremiah Smith, the ungodly freshman wide receiver at that, he's doing his job. He went 24 for 29, 311 yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception. Not bad at all. Trevayon Henderson, he went 10 for 80, 2 touchdowns. Will Howard had 37 yards. Scrambling, Quishon Judkins, he went 10 for 34 and 2 touchdowns as well. I mean, Jeremiah Smith had a $103 for 2 touchdowns. I mean, Ohio State's offense was just unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. And honestly, I might, depending on how they play Texas this next weekend, they might win it all. It might come down to Ohio State versus Notre Dame. But I'll get into that in the next video. I can't spoil everything. Let's see what other games happened. Not important. Another game that was quite interesting but didn't really affect the playoff contention at all. Miami versus Iowa State. There's big talk about Cam Ward sitting out the second half. He played the first half, but then the Miami Hurricanes, they lost by 1. I'll say this about this. Now I've heard different takes, whether it's Cam Newton or Shannon Sharp. Shannon Sharp said that he would have stayed in the whole game because he played the first half, so he's going to play the second half. Cam Newton said, basically, you're the talent. And honestly, they do it all the time. They'll move on from you in a quick, hot second. I see both sides, but my whole thing is, if you're going to play in the first half, play in the whole game. If you were hurt, I understand that. By all means, sit down, because we don't want you to get hurt. But if you were healthy, and you quit on your team like that, it looks terrible. Especially for your draft stock, especially as you personally, it looks terrible. Now, if you didn't want to play in the game at all, I'm perfectly fine with that as well. Not my decision. Not one bit my decision. But choose either or. It doesn't look good on somebody, especially a black quarterback, to play in the first quarter, win the achievement, and then sit down. That's absolutely atrocious. It looks terrible. Now, I know you might not care, but in this day and age, things will get to you. And this might be brought back up. You start playing bad in the NFL, that might be brought back up. And we don't want to see that happen. Because I absolutely hate when somebody keeps something over somebody's head. And we don't want that. So moving on. Colorado got elephant stomped against BYU, 36-14. They didn't come to show up at all on the offensive side of the ball. Travis Hunter did pretty good. But on the defensive side of the ball, they could not stop BYU at all. They were atrocious. And that's all I'm going to say about that. They were absolutely atrocious. Alabama lost to Michigan, and this is why I say, oh, well, Alabama should have got in. Alabama just got beat by Michigan. And Michigan hasn't been, won't ever be. I won't say won't ever be, but they haven't been one of the best teams in college football this entire year. And Alabama just lost to them by 6. Not even by 1 or 3. By a touchdown. Crazy work. South Carolina. Oh, South Carolina should have just got in. They got beat by Illinois. Now, all you haters that were talking about South Carolina and Alabama being in the playoff contention, oh, they would have gave a better run for their money. Look what happened. We would have got the same loss to win ratio. Absolutely atrocious. But that's going to wrap it up for but the first round of playoffs. Honestly, I thought it was really interesting. Some of the teams that won, I expected to. Some of the teams that won, I did not expect to. Obviously, teams need to prepare better. For example, Tennessee and Clemson. But Penn State, Ohio State looked unstoppable. And the running game of Texas looked unmatchable. So let's just see what the playoff holds. Go on to episode 2 of playoffs round 2 to see what else games happened, and I'll be talking about that as well. So that's going to be a wrap for it. I'm your host, Keanu Smith, K-Stang Productions, out.